Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Work.knits podcast. It's a little bit delayed this time around, so thank you for your patience and thank you for waiting, but I'm really excited to sit down and chat to you today about my knitting over the last couple of weeks, some finished objects, some works in progress, a couple of yarn acquisitions, and a little bit of life in general. So grab yourself something nice to drink, maybe a snack, and let's get started. So if we have any new viewers of the podcast, a very brief introduction. My name is Lauren. I'm coming to you from the southwest of the United Kingdom, and I've been knitting for about 10 years, and this is kind of my podcast where I share all my projects, my works in progress with all of you, get your feedback, get your thoughts, and it's kind of like an online knit night. That's kind of how I see it, I've realised. So welcome. If you are returning viewer, welcome back. It's lovely to see you again. And thank you for your patience, because this is a little bit delayed. This was supposed to be released on Friday. I did record on Friday. I've had like a series of technical glitches over the last few days, and then I had some plans this weekend that I just couldn't, that it was tricky to work around. So here we are on a Monday. And I'm going to dive straight into finished objects, actually, because I'm wearing one of them and it's very, very warm. So please excuse the look today, the incredibly frizzy hair, the lack of makeup. It's been a really beautifully warm period here in the UK. I've been absolutely luxuriating in it, not complaining one little bit, but it does make wearing knitwear for the purpose of the podcast a little bit tricky. So we're going to dive into finished objects, and yes, this first one I am wearing, and I'm going to stand up so that you can see it a bit better, hopefully. Okay, so this is my thin air sweater by Lily Kate Makes, Lily Kate Designs, Lily Kate France. She goes by a couple of names, but yes, by Lily Kate. It is a V-neck raglan top-down sweater, knit first flat and then in the round. And I cast this on a few days after I published my last episode 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, and I finished it yesterday. So this has absolutely flown off the needles. It's slightly mad. I'm actually going to take it off to be able to show you some more of the details, and so that I don't overheat right now. Okay, so let's start with what I have knit this up in. So this sweater is knit up in John Arbon textiles in their Yarnadelic base, which is a kind of fingering weight 4-ply / sport. I've knit this up in the main colour. This kind of lighter colour is Ordinary Joe, and then this kind of, it looks very orange on camera. It's actually got loads of pink in it too. I don't know if you can see that. This is called Wondrous Place. I had 2 skeins of Ordinary Joe and 1 skein of the Wondrous Place. So I knit this up. I've had this in my future knitting plans now for ages. You guys will probably be actually bored of me going on about it, and I just finally cast it on. I think at the end of the last episode I'd said I was really keen to finish off some of these whips that have been on my needles for quite literally months. I cast on so many things and then I don't. Anyway, I'm not going to berate myself. And I just got to a point where I just thought, you know what, this is my hobby, and instead of pressurising myself, I should just do what I enjoy. So I could just cast it on. I didn't even wait to finish the other 2 sweaters. I cast this on the recommended needle size, which was 3.75 millimeters, without swatching. I would normally advise swatching. The reason I didn't was just because, well, there's a couple of reasons. One being I didn't have very much yarn, and so I couldn't afford to do a proper swatch that was both flat and in the round. Particularly the in the round swatches, you need to cut the threads off the back, like that loop around the back, to get a really accurate, gauge swatch, and I just couldn't afford to lose that yarn. And then the other reason was that the pattern, it includes about 6 to 8 inches of positive ease. So I knew if my gauge was tighter than Lily Kate's, then I still had some wiggle room there, because I don't need 6 to 8 inches. I think, as you would have seen when I put it on, I reckon I've got about 4 inches total. 4 to 6, maybe 2 to 3 inches on each side of my body. So yeah, I cast on. I followed all the instructions down to the end of the yoke and separation for the sleeves. The design does have contrast yarn on the cuffs but not on the bottom, so that was a modification of mine. And I also did some decreases down the side after the underarm, because I find if I don't, my sweaters end up very triangular. So that kind of made sure that it hung straight on me. On the neckline, I did less rows of ribbing than the pattern recommends, because I just wanted that slightly finer rib look. And the other thing I would say, and this is probably me, because I know the pattern was testing it, etc., so it's probably me being stupid, but the central double decrease here, I understood the instructions for the decrease, but in terms of the instructions for when you should be doing it, I didn't find those very clear. That's probably me, but I just couldn't get the maths to work out. Like, the number of stitches that was being instructed for after the beginning of round marker didn't make sense to me. And obviously, like, on a v-neck, you kind of know where you're putting those double decreases, but yeah, I struggled. And then I didn't really like the look of the double decrease that had been instructed in the pattern, so I kind of used my own. So this bit down here, if you look closely, is a bit messy. It's not quite how I'd want it, but it's not bad enough for me to want to rip back. And then on the sleeves, I did the decreases as instructed, so they are kind of tapered but quite wide sleeves. And I've got the contrast colour. Again, this contrast is not knit in line with the pattern. I kind of did my own distribution of the colour work, and in terms of how I calculated that and how I knit all of that, so both sleeves have got 8 inches of the contrast colour at the ends, and then the body has got not far off that, but probably closer to about 7 inches. But I think kind of proportionately, given where my arms hang in comparison to my body, it kind of all looks about right. I was playing a lot of yarn chicken. This is all I have left of the yarn. So I did a lot of kind of putting live stitches on hold, and then kind of knitting a bit here and then jumping to another section. And there was that was probably a little bit stressful. I probably could have done with, annoyingly, I probably could have done with like 25 grams more of Ordinary Joe, and probably like 20-25 grams more of the Wanderer's Place. Now, I'll come on to this later, but funnily enough, I did actually go to the John Arbon textile mill this weekend, and one of the reasons for knitting this sweater when I did was to, if I did need more yarn, I knew I could get hold of it easily. What I didn't know was that they did minis versions for this base. I thought they only did full skeins, and I didn't know that until I got to the mill. So had I known that, I think I might have paused on this project just to be able to get those extra bits, but I knew I didn't want to buy whole 100 gram skeins. So anyway, I'm very happy with how this has worked up. My plan is to kind of style it just with like a little cami top underneath, maybe not a black one and maybe not as high up as this one, and to style it with work trousers and pairs of jeans in the autumn. So really looking forward to that. I think that will be good. Yeah, just trying to think what else I have to say about this, really. I mean, I absolutely love the yarn. I did love the pattern. I whipped through it, as you guys can tell. And I love the drape and the hang. I think it was a good choice of fabric. It's quite woolly. I would potentially make another one in a slightly less woolly yarn. Maybe slightly more like superwash. I think that could look really gorgeous. But yeah, very, very chuffed with this sweater. First proper v-neck sweater. I've done a v-neck top, but not a sweater. So that's my first finished object. All ends are woven in. It has been blocked, and that is now going to get packed away with the rest of my knitwear ready for our move. So funny, I really kind of like boldly, or like, not bold's not the right word, I just very confidently go, oh yeah, I'll go podcast without any makeup on, and then I always look at myself in the viewfinder and I'm like, should I have done that? Anyway, my next finished object is again something that I mentioned in my future knitting plans at the end of last episode, and again, rather than waiting, I just thought, nope, that's what I want to do, I'm going to cast it on. So at the end of the last episode, I spoke about casting on an Oslo hat, baby size, for some friends of ours who are having a baby this summer, and I wanted to kind of knit them some stuff when the baby's that bit bigger during the winter. I looked at the Oslo pattern, and it has one size for baby, and I just wasn't sure. Babies range quite a lot in size from when they're newborns through to, some people even class like a 2-year-old as a baby. And given that the sizing in the pattern, I think, went baby, child, adult, adult large, I just wasn't sure what they were classifying as a baby. So what I've done is instead had a look at other patterns I have that would apply for babies and found the anthology hat in the Tin Can Knits Strange Brew pattern book. And they've got very clear delineations of what age of child correlates with each size. So I went for the 0 to 6 month old. I used the yarn that I said I was going to use, which was the Novita 100% merino yarn, and then the tiny mini I had left, I think it was like about 5 to 10 grams of Holskarn Highland sock yarn, which is the navy contrast, and I've knit up this little tiny hat. It's so adorable. This has produced a really polished fabric. I love this fabric. It just feels very ready to wear, feels very like almost shop bought. Hopefully will be very easy for the parents to wash, etc. The pom-poms made in the same fabric. I did a little folded hem at the base to kind of give that hat sturdiness. I always think a single layer of rib when you're doing quite a dense colour work, there's like an imbalance between the two fabrics. You could try holding the yarn double for the rib rather than knitting a double rib, a double brim would be the opposite, the other way of kind of getting that thickness, but I just think there's a really nice balance to this. The colourwork pattern is not from the Tin Can Knits book. It's just a very, very simple flea stitch motif done over 4 rows. And I did something quite cool in the sense that I almost like did that in helical knitting, because I was getting quite a big float, like jumping from 2 of the rows within the pattern, and I kind of got rid of that massive float by, yes, almost doing like helical knitting. I can go into more detail if people are interested, so do let me know. And I knit this on 3.5mm needles, just did the whole thing. On 3.5, first on some kind of 12 to 16-inch circulars, and then did some magic loop for the decreases on the crown. But yeah, second finished object. So 2 finished objects this week, which feels fabby, when I say this week, in this episode. So very, very happy with both of those. I also made some progress, I feel, on some of my whips. So let's have a sip of tea and then come on to that. Okay, so I picked up a couple of project bags that are on my lap. So the first whip that I made some progress on, and shock horror because you haven't seen this in a while, but I finally picked up my apples cowl. This is a pattern that I was kind of creating myself. For those who are kind of joining the podcast relatively new, I was creating a pattern for apples, like a colourwork motif for apples, in homage to Somerset, which is where I currently live. And I've been using yarn from Pixie Yarn Company. Beautiful hand dyer in Somerset. Really just the whole thing was meant to be kind of Somerset, Somerset, Somerset. And I wanted to do this at the beginning of this year. And basically I started off by making very quickly, like as in I very quickly produced a little apples hat. But as you can probably see, this is after blocking and the fabric just hasn't quite worked. The floats are really tightening up, although I do think the apples look really neat and beautiful. There's a kind of close up, but yes, the floats and the kind of catching of the floats just wasn't quite working in stranded colour work. You can see on the inside, there we go. So that was the apples hat. I mean, I think it would fit a child, but yeah, I just wasn't quite happy with the fabric it made. So I have then been trying the cowl version using duplicate stitch. And this is taking a lot longer, if I'm honest, to do duplicate stitch. I don't think the apples look quite as good, and I'm doing alternate rows. So I'm just kind of seeing where I get to with this. But yeah, the project did not work out quite the way I'd wanted it to. But we will get there, it will be fine. And somehow the apples are coming out a lot bigger, which doesn't really make any sense because I'm using exactly the same chart and the same needle size for both projects. But again, this must just be to do with the tightening of the floats. The apples are a drastically different size. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I'm using exactly the same number of stitches. So it's really peculiar, but I guess, again, that's kind of the pulling in effect. But maybe the apples look better when they're pulled in. I don't know. Anyway, guys, we are plugging ahead with that. So what I've basically done is to try and make the process of doing the duplicate stitch a little bit more interesting. I've basically broken a bit more kind of fluid and get into flow. I've basically broken the apples down into sections, and so I'm knitting the whole round certain section of the whole round, then I'm going out on and adding the bottom of the apple and hopefully to that whole strip, and then I'll do the top, etc. But the last time I showed this, I'd done the first bottom round minus the leaves and then plus 1 or 2 of the second row. So some progress being made on that. Absolutely love the yarn, love the depth of colour, still absolutely love the idea, just really struggling to find an execution of it that works for me, but we will get there. And even though the inside of this is going to look like an absolute mess, there's like floats, there's all sorts going on in here, it's just really not going to look quite the way I wanted it to. What I think I might do is A, line it with a very thin knitted lining, yeah, B, this is such a learning curve and a learning process for me on designing colourwork motifs, so a handy lesson. But yeah, absolutely love the yarn, really enjoying it. So that's the first whip, sorry, that I worked on. The second whip I've been working on, and I'm still a bit disinclined to go into detail on this just because I will be giving you guys a full rundown when I finally finish this, but I have picked up and knit about just under half the second sleeve on my Tin Can Knits Strange Brew recipe heavily modified t-shirt top, long sleeve top thing. I'm not going to call it a sweater because that's just not really the style that I was going for, but yeah, we are really close on this. So I will go into full detail on this whip in the next episode when it will 100% be done, because I am, for once, not, normally I hate sleeves. I'm really loving them at the moment, so I think I will power through the sleeve now I'm, part way down already. So that's very exciting, good progress there. And then I have also picked up another old whip, which is this Colourwork cowl with this absolutely enormous kind of almost like Art Deco style motif. This is being knit up in some leftover Ficalana Saga in the colourway 121. This is the darker colour. This is what I was using in my Medina top. This is 100% lambswool, beautiful soft rustic yarn. Like, so I know soft and rustic sound contradictory, but it's got like a kind of, it's not got a superwash finish. It's got a nice natural finish. And then I'm holding that or contrasting that with a Dusky Rose colourway from Sandler's Garn in their Sunday fingering weight, I believe. Yes, well, it's fingering weight, but I think it's their Sunday base. Which has got a little bit more of a superwash finish, even though it's a 100% wool product. And the two together are creating the most stunning fabric. I'm knitting this on 3.5mm needles. I've divided the colourwork up with a little bit of coloured ribbing, and the idea is to either do a single or double loop, depending how long I can make it, infinity cowl, where I kind of then graft the beginning to the end, so it'll be kind of double thickness. And I'm really looking forward to it. The only thing is, at the moment, this would have had so much more progress on it. In fact, I think I would have finished this ages ago, but it's just not very portable. The chart is absolutely massive. Currently it's in a book. I took a photo of it. That didn't really work because I couldn't get the zoom on my phone to, anyway, that wasn't working. So I really need to scan the page and then use a post-it note, I think, to follow the chart. And I think then I'll start getting a lot more progress on this. But you do have to really keep looking. It's quite an involved colourwork project. But been really fun to pick that up again. And then everything in here is a little bit knotted together. And then I have started on a new design. And I know it must feel like I keep saying, oh, I'm designing this, or I'm drafting this, and then you don't see it. There's the Karen wrap that I made ages ago. I'll insert a picture here. That is still going to be a pattern, along with the cabled collar that I showed you last episode. All of these things are all going to be patterns, and I am building towards a kind of goal of releasing a collection of patterns all in one ebook. An ebook sounds a bit grand for what I actually mean. I just mean that like you could purchase them all together as opposed to having to buy them all individually, and do like a bit of like an autumn mini collection of patterns. So they will all be coming out, and I will probably be knitting a second copy of some of these. I think lots of people were quite interested in the cabled collar, so maybe towards the back end of the summer I'll release a test knit call. That is a super quick thing to knit up. It's just, it took me so long because I was trying to figure out all the instructions. But yes, these will all start coming together, and hopefully work towards kind of having them available very soon. So yeah, so the bag I've been knitting on, and as I say, things all a bit tangled up, and I'll kind of give you a sneak peek, but there's kind of not enough really to give you a real idea of what it's going to look like. But um, yeah, it's going to be really hard to show because this is all tangled. So this is a wool cotton blend. It's the grey from Hjert Garn, and I'm holding it with some leftovers from another project that I worked on, and the leftovers are the Kremka Stellaris base in like the antique gold colourway. I'm knitting them in a kind of textured, almost like woven stitch, and it's going to be a kind of envelope clutch style bag. So I'm really, really looking forward to it. I basically have had an event recently that I'm going to that I just didn't quite have the right accessory in my wardrobe, and I didn't want to purchase a new one, but I did just think, how about I make what it is I've been looking for, and then next time I will have it. So that is the idea there. I feel like I've whistled through all of the knitting, given that there's actually been quite a lot in the last week. I haven't picked up my spinning at all since I last showed you spinning, but I can see myself doing a bit of that this week. And I'm not going to make any predictions about what I will or won't work on in the next 2 weeks. We have got some interesting movements in terms of what's going on in our lives over the next 3 weeks, which I will share towards the end, but I think that definitely makes what knitting progress I'll make quite unpredictable. So what I'll do now, if everyone is happy, is I think I will talk about a couple of things regarding this channel, and kind of some bits that I touched on in the last episode that I thought I'd update you on that are knitting, very heavily knitting related. I will do that before we kind of move into talking about my weekend at John Arbon, and before talking about some acquisitions and life in general. So that's kind of what you can expect from the next section of the podcast. So in terms of the bits that we touched on last episode, I chatted to you all about my desire to start creating videos and content that kind of touches on different makers here in the UK, different yarn businesses, different farms that are producing, fleeces and stuff for the knitting industry. Just kind of sharing the process. And it's funny because this kind of coincided with, but was not, linked in any way to me also heading to the John Arbon Mill for their Mill Open weekend this weekend. And I think I've come away from that even more inspired to create this sort of content. And I was explaining to you in the last episode that in order to do that, I really need to invest in some new equipment, and I just need to be really like considered in not just kind of creating lots of low grade quality content. I need, like, if I'm going to create more content, it's all got to be good quality. That's what I want to share with you all. So in order to do that, I need to invest some money in this channel and what I'm doing. And I was just talking to you guys about how best to do that, and you were all very supportive, so thank you. And what I decided on in the last couple of weeks, sorry, I've got something in my eye, ow. What I decided on in the last few weeks is that I'm going to set up a Ko-fi account, because I think if I went for Patreon, the irony would be that the kind of lure of Patreon is that you're creating exclusive video content, which sounds great, but I'd be ironically creating that content on the equipment that currently isn't fit for purpose. And so that just feels very ironic to me. Whereas Ko-fi is a bit more of like a one-off, you can set it so that it's a one-off donation of the equivalent of a coffee. And there's also kind of a gallery where you can post progress on different things and like alerts to say, oh, we're going to be doing this or whatever. So that just feels a bit better for me at the moment. It feels a bit weird on the other hand because people are kind of donating without getting something immediately back. But I think it's the best thing for now. I think once I can start, once I have the equipment to start producing proper interviews and stuff, and do kind of almost like vlog style things, going to these different places in the UK to interview people, then I think Patreon might be more appropriate. But for now, we're going with Ko-fi. I will link it down below if anyone feels able to support or wants to support. But if if a donation is not, you know, a cup of coffee donation is not within the realm of possibility right now, very, very much understood, and no one should feel obliged. And just for, you know, for anyone that applies to, you know, just commenting, subscribing, liking these videos means the world to me, and that is, you know, more than enough. So thank you so much if you're already doing that and you're supporting this channel in that way. So that's my Ko-fi news. I've also, since the last episode, produced a quick 10-minute video summarising some thoughts on Gauge and kind of hopefully kind of answering lots of questions that people may have had. I know other podcasters and designers do answer questions like these, but I've just noticed myself when I'm trying to find a video that kind of summarises answers and thoughts on a topic, they're all kind of like hidden within videos about other things, or they're in the middle of a podcast episode, or like, anyway, I just really struggled to find like a complete, like a summary on the topic. So subject to all of your thoughts, I was going to just every now and again produce a video, make a series of kind of let's talk about, and then have kind of a series talking about different 10-minute summaries of different topics. So let me know what you think. If you think that would be of help to you and you haven't yet seen it, I'll link the video down below in the description box. But hopefully just a helpful resource and easy to find whenever you need it. So that's another update from the last couple of weeks. I'm just trying to think if there's any more like channel related admin. Not really, other than if I am a bit delayed in my podcasting schedule, which is normally every other Friday, I will tend to let people know via my stories on Instagram. I don't post massives on Instagram. I'm trying to get better and trying to get better putting finished objects up there. So there'll be a couple this week for those projects I've shown you today. But if you do want to be able to get a heads up when I'm running a bit late, then that will be the place to find me and to find the updates. And that will be, my handle is @work.knits on Instagram. Okay, so I wanted to share a little bit about my trip to John Arbon, the John Arbon mill. I would put right up at the top here, this was not sponsored or gifted. I paid for tickets to tour the mill with my own money, and I went with my mum, who is a weaver, and we had an amazing time. I have been a mill member now for a couple of years, and I just really am intrigued by the whole process of yarn. I have at times looked into like how it would work if I wanted to start, you know, small batch yarn production, because there are lots of Somerset farmers who burn their fleeces because they can't make the finances work. And I was trying to figure out whether there's a way of kind of stopping that burning happening, because it's a huge waste and it's a bit harmful to the environment, and how we could turn that into yarn. And having looked into it a bit and then seeing the mill production, it amazes me that people have found ways to make this a viable business, and such a successful business, producing such beautiful things and supporting so many other local farmers, other kind of long-standing traditional production methods here in the UK. So my mind was blown. I will insert at the end of this video some clips of the different machines they showed us. They showed us around. They've got 2 stories to their mill, and the first story of the first floor of the mill is kind of all machines that essentially take it from quite wide tops or roving that they get that comes to them. They are involved in everything that happens to it beforehand, but it happens off site, and then when the fleece arrives, it's in tops form, like these massive strips, very, very thick, and then they essentially feed it through several machines that draft it and blend it into the colours that they want to use for their different yarns, and kind of gets it into a density that can be fed into the spinning machines. They've then got 2 spinning machines on the ground floor, at least, I think it's 2, including Kevin. So all the machines are named, human names. I can't remember all the machines, but there was definitely like a Ralph, a Cuthbert, there was another one I can't remember, and then there was Butler and Kevin. Kevin is a 96. I'm probably, from a spinner's point of view, I'm probably going to use the wrong word, but in order to help everyone understand, like they have these huge bobbins. So let's just say, let's call it, it's 96 bobbins, and these bobbins are huge. It's got 96 of those all being loaded up from the tops being fed through the back. And then upstairs, they've got the coning machine, they've got machines that do the plying, or as they call it, folding. And then they've got the skeining machines, and then the twisting machines to twist the skeins into hanks, and the labelling and all that. So it was amazing to go and see. Amazing to see the yarns being produced. Just what these machines can do is incredible. And also the math that goes into the production of yarn is amazing. So really, really interesting. And it made buying some of the yarn all the more special because you've seen all that process that goes into making it. So as I say, I'll put some video from that tour in the back end of the this episode. I did check with John Arbon that they're happy to include bits of video and for us to take them and share them, and they very kindly said they were happy. So these videos are shared with their blessing. And yeah, I just want to say a huge thank you to John Arbon for opening up their mill and their processes and being so open to explain to people how it all works. And yeah, just the enlightenment that comes from that. I think it's a really special thing to do, and I think it'd be great to see behind the doors of more knitting businesses. So that's really fantastic. So that leads quite nicely on into acquisitions, of which there were a few from the mill. It is my birthday coming up, so some of these were kind of gifted to me from family members. But I thought I'd go through what I picked up at the mill whilst I was there. So John Arbon tend to send their stuff in these lovely cloth bags with their logo printed. We also got a little pin that says "I've been through the mill," which I thought was very cute. And I have been interested to try a few different things. So the first thing I'll come to, John Arbon are changing the base that their Knit by Numbers DK is produced on. And so for these mill open weekends, they have got a kind of one-off opportunity to purchase some of the old base at a sale price. So I did that. And I've never used their Knit by Numbers DK. So I purchased, and these are all kind of done in numbers rather than colours, but Knit by Numbers 48 and Knit by Numbers 48 and, oh, I'm repeating myself. And 46, sorry, there we go. So essentially these all come from the same base colours, but then they're kind of blended into slightly different shades within that colour. So these are kind of greeny, bluey, duck eggy, grey. Oh, they're stunning. There's 250 meters per 100 grams. Yeah. So I've got two of those. So I'm really pleased with these. These are 100% pure Falkland merino wool, all organically farmed, and they're recommending 4mm needles for this. I think I'm going to make these two into like a striped sleeveless vest type thing. Maybe one of the, like, I need to have a look at gauge and stuff, but maybe one of Petite Knits ones with like a big collar, if I've got enough yarn for that, which I hope I do. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm picturing for these. Something subtly striped. Yeah. I haven't really got things this colour. Oh, no, that's a lie. I've got things kind of roughly in this colour zone within my wardrobe, but not these shades, so I'm very excited. So that was my first purchase, was two of those. The next purchase I made, and this is something I've wanted to try for ages, I keep putting these into my baskets from other yarn shops, and then I just, for some reason, never pulled the plug, whatever you want to call it, hit the trigger. But this is their Exmoor Sock 4-ply. This is one of their only yarns where they dye the skeins once the yarn has been spun. For most of their other bases, they dye the fibre first, then they blend fibre into the colourways. So this is one of the only ones they don't do that for. So I got this in the colour Mackerel Sky, and whortleberries, I think. So I think I'm hoping to try and squeeze out 2 pairs of shorties. So I've got 100 grams here. I tend to be able to make a pair of socks in less than 50 grams because I've got quite small feet. And I always have leftovers from a 50-gram ball. So I'm hoping I might be able to squeeze out kind of 2 pairs of socks out of this. 1 pair will be my time to decompress socks because I've made a pair for my future mother-in-law and I've made a pair for my other half, but I've not yet made a pair that I'm keeping. And then I think I might have a go at another colourwork pair of socks, or maybe like a stripy pair of socks, I don't know. But yes, 2 skeins of the Exmoor sock. And then I had to pick up some of this because the feel on this was just, the handle on this was beautiful. This is their Pure Elements DK. It's a limited edition to 2022, so I guess they had it on sale. This is Valley Mist, is this colour. It's kind of natural. I think this is undyed. It's kind of like a stony colour. It is 45% alpaca, 45% Exmoor Blueface, 10% Jacobs/fine brown British wool. And it's 250 metres per 100 gram skein again. And it's just stunning. So yeah, DK weight, kind of a very light kind of woolen spun. Well, I think they said their mill is a worsted mill, but that's to do with the draw, not, I mean, the actual, this is like a 2-ply and it's quite light and airy. I think this is a woolen spun yarn. So yeah, this is absolutely beautiful, and I bought, it's from a different range but has got a similar type of ply to it. I bought a little skein of the new Appledore double knit base, which is 40% Devon close wool, 40% Romney and 20% Exmoor Blueface. This is a 25 gram mini, and this is in the colourway Pig Snout, which has just got such an incredible array of colours in it. And this has got the same kind of very beautiful loose kind of 2-ply. So I thought these could go together. Again, these could either make a really lovely vest with the pink being a kind of trim around the neck and the arms or something, or these could make a really beautiful shawl. But I think the drape on this, particularly given the amount of alpaca in there, will be stunning. So that's another combo. So in total, quite a few skeins, 4 100 gram skeins of DK, 2 50 gram skeins of Exmoor sock, and a 25 gram mini. Let's see if I can, there we go. So a real yarn splurge, but that's for my birthday from multiple family members. So I'm obviously incredibly grateful to them for that gift. If I plop these over here. And then the other thing they had there was, so in the mill, we got shown that they have this machine that does the plying of the singles that they have spun. And that machine, once you, for kind of quality control reasons, once the machine is going, if it has to stop, you have to cut the cones there, like at that point, because the machine takes a while to get up to speed and then takes a while to slow down, and the bits of yarn that are plied during those periods are not as applied to the correct twist per inch. They're a kind of looser level of twist, so they have to stop and cut the cones at that point. Otherwise someone would get a randomly loose applied bit of yarn in the middle of their skein. So what they do when they have to do that is they might then end up with a really strange amount of the single left on the cone that was being plied from, if I'm making any sense. So for, let's say they have a power cut, they might end up, you know, having to chop the cone off at a point when they didn't intend, right when it's almost finished. Or they might, yeah, there's lots of things that could cause them to have to stop the machine. But anyway, instead of putting those singles that are very strange lengths and amounts left, instead of those going to waste, what they have done is they have wound them into minis. So these are single plied, very, very fine. These are not even like lace weight, they're lighter than lace weight. And they had all of these plied up into little, skeined up into tiny little minis, and they had just loads of these in 2 big boxes, and they were £6 for 100 grams of whichever ones you wanted. So they had a little scale and I just filled up the scale. I'm missing one somewhere. It's a bit worrying. Whoops. Sorry, great podcasting here. So I wound one up last night and tried to knit straight with just the single ply, and that's not going to work. So I'm going to need to cake these so that I can pull from the centre and the outer and knit them basically held double, because these are just so fine. I was trying to knit them on 2.75mm needles and they were still too fine. Anyway, I've picked the whole selection. So I've got these 3 pinks. I have no idea how I'm going to hold all these, but these 3 pinks. Then I've got 2 greys. This one's got beautiful kind of silk in it. I've got the light one that I've already balled up. And then I've got some kind of blues. And then I've got a selection of greens as well. So I want to do like an ombre rainbow blanket out of these. I have no idea how big the blanket will be. I could knit them into the little triangles to go into my big mini triangles blanket. I don't know, but they were just too gorgeous to pass up. So very, very delighted with these, and £6 for all of these together. So I thought that was incredible, both in terms of avoiding waste, using things that are still beautiful even though they're not perfect, and just a gorgeous collection of colours as well. So very excited to knit those up. And then I had 2 other acquisitions this week, one of which was not an intended acquisition, which I know sounds like I'm excusing something, but hopefully it'll become apparent in a minute what I mean by that. So for my wedding in November, my mum is really kindly weaving my other half and I a runner, like a table runner, and we're going to use it both in the ceremony space where we get married and also for the wedding breakfast afterwards on the kind of top table. And we are basically doing like a kind of sunsetty pink and orange for the main part. We're going to include some little strips of gold, and then we're trying to figure out what colour should go at either end, and we think we want the dark green that's going to kind of match other parts of our colour scheme. So I ordered some yarn for that purpose. So it's going to sound really silly, but yeah, because it's something for the wedding, it's not something to wear, it's kind of part of my wedding budget. I just classify it a bit differently in my head, which I don't know if that's right, but that's just how I think about it anyway. So I ordered some Holst yarn. I ordered it in the shade Tundra, which is this gorgeous kind of very complex green colour. And I've knit a jumper in this before, this exact colourway. I love Holst, I've knit loads of stuff in it. One of my whips today was in Holst. So I ordered 2 cakes, and my mum swatched what this would look like with the main colours that we're using on her, like she's got like a mini testing loom, and the green just wasn't quite right. When it was put next to this kind of dark ember orange held with like a papaya pink, which probably sounds horrible but trust me works, we're holding a strand of each of those together for this gorgeous kind of grapefruity colour. But when it was put next to this, it just, both colours looked muddier. They just didn't bring the best out in each other. So I've ended up using a different skein from my stash to give to my mum to do the ends. It's just a darker green. It's got a bit more blue in it rather than yellow. So these are now going to be in my stash, which was never my intention. But hey, never going to complain about having Holst in my stash. And at the time, obviously thinking they weren't going to become in my stash, but given the cost of shipping from Denmark to the UK at the moment, it literally financially did not make sense to order 2 cakes. These are about £2.50 each per 50 gram ball. Incredible value, 287 metres. But the postage was double the cost of the yarn that I was ordering. Like, that just did not make sense. So I wanted to try their Titicaca base. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. So I ordered their Rose Bay colour, which is this gorgeous pinky colour. This is 100% alpaca. It's super fine. There is 400 metres per 50 grams. And I just wanted to try this out and do some swatching because I have decided I'm going to knit some versions of the George's sweater for my bridesmaids for the wedding. Big commitment, but we're going to go for it. Anyway, those are, the George's sweater is supposed to be knit in 2 strands of mohair held together, and I just think that's going to be a bit beyond budget. So I'm just trying to see if I can substitute one of those for something like an alpaca. And so I want to swatch this with a mohair and then see how much it still expands, because obviously alpaca can get very drapey. I don't want to make them kind of really shapeless when they're blocked. So this is for swatching purposes. I have no idea what that swatch might be. A hat, that swatch might be a cowl or a little shawl. I have no idea. But yeah, I just wanted to basically see how this responds to blocking, etc., when it's held with something stronger. So I'm very excited. It's a beautiful colour. So I've essentially ended up with 3 balls of Holst going into my stash, which was never my plan. But hey, that's just sometimes how things go. So yeah, that is all the knitty related content. I feel like I've spoken incredibly fast, so apologies if that is the case. So a little bit about life in general, if you are interested. If you're not, then completely understood, but I just thought I'd give a little bit of background on what's happening over the next couple of weeks, because the next time I podcast, I may be in a very different location. So some of you will be aware that we are moving. We need to sell our current property and we need to buy in a new area of the country. This is all to do with jobs. Both of us are starting new jobs. I'm starting a new job in the middle of July. My other half is starting a new job at the beginning of September. And we just need to be in a different area. Quite a drastically different area. So we are moving, and yeah, basically next 2 weeks, I've got my last 2 weeks in my current job. I'm heading on a work trip to Europe for 4 days, 3-4 days. That's going to be in the next week or so. I'm not going to be overly specific about timeframes on that, but yes, that's in the next week or so. And then I've also got a couple of days in London to go and kind of hand various bits in, hand bits over. And then we've got quite a busy weekend with kind of a social event we go to every single year, which will be lovely, but it always takes a bit of logistics. We are then going back to see my family in another part of the country for a day or two to celebrate my birthday. And then we've got about 3 or 4 days to pack all kind of non-furniture bits up from the house and move those to my other half's parents' home for a kind of intermediate move. We're basically going to move in with them for currently a kind of undetermined amount of time whilst we put this place on the market, start our new jobs, hopefully sell this place, hopefully find a new place to buy, but they're kind of helping us bridge that gap where we need to be in that new location for work, but we haven't quite got houses sorted and stuff there. So that's all happening, all of that in, as I say, I'm trying not to be overly specific about dates and stuff because that feels a bit weird. You guys knowing exactly where I'm going to be, but all of that is happening in the next 3.5 weeks, and obviously my next podcast will be within that time. So I have no idea where I will be podcasting from. It may be I'm podcasting from my future in-laws, it may be I'm podcasting from here, it may be that I'm podcasting from my parents' house. I have no idea. So we're just going with the flow. And there's going to be lots of travel, there's going to be lots of things not being quite as accessible as they'd usually be. So I've kind of got to get this like blend between letting knitting be my kind of my stress reliever, but also I can't have like too many things on the go because then I've got to keep all of those with me at all times. I've got to kind of allocate, I think, some of my stash as like, there is no way I'm going to be knitting that in the next month or two. And then that will need to be just packed away. And then there's going to be another box, which is more like my current knitting. But it's going to be tricky because, yeah, part of the thing I love about knitting is kind of looking at my stash and being inspired. And then, yeah. So who knows, guys? And I have no idea how much knitting time I'll have. It will go one of 2 ways. It will either be that I end up with loads, or it will end up that I have not very much at all. So we will see. But my aim is at the very least to finish that sweater that I very quickly glanced over today with you. That should be a fairly easy thing to finish in the next few days. Get that blocked, or like ends woven, blocked, and then pack that away with some of the other jumpers so those can kind of go into like storage for, because, you know, I'm not going to need to wear that until the autumn winter time. So hopefully you'll see a picture of that going up on Instagram if indeed you follow me on over there. And yeah, other than that, I just don't really want to put any pressure on myself for anything in particular, but that's kind of the state of play. So all very exciting stuff that if anyone else has been doing, if anyone else has ever moved, which I'm sure most of you have at some point, you'll know just how generally stressful that is. I think the amount of uncertainty when you're part of a chain and when there's kind of new jobs going on in the middle of it and you're trying to live in someone else's home, however generous that offer is, and I'm not, it's super generous they're having us, but I think for everyone involved it's kind of a bit of an unusual situation, or can be, if you haven't done it before. So it's going to be a very interesting few weeks. So yeah, all the change, all the exciting stuff. And with that, I'm going to stop rambling and I'm going to let you enjoy the rest of your day, rest of the week. Thank you for joining me here today. I hope it's been worth the wait, and I really look forward to speaking to you in about 2 weeks' time. Happy knitting, stay safe, bye.